So I wanted to start actually with a question that might not make sense, but I'm hoping you guys can pull it all the threads together, which is how in each of your businesses you leverage this word that has become, I think, currency in our industry, which is data. Tim has said data is the new Intel inside, and that was actually one of the founding principles of Web 2.0 in 2004, that data is the Intel inside. And I know that each of you have significant amounts of data in your businesses, and you use them to figure out how to have conversations with your consumers at scale. So, Yusuf, I'll let you start.
Sure. And just how do we use data? Well, I think in the group that I'm part of, the online division, data is kind of the lifeblood of what we're about. And Microsoft has historically been a software services business where software is the key. And when we came to the online, it was interesting how that it's really not about software, it's about the data. And so whether that's how we build a product, where at any given time for Bing, there are 100 different versions that are live at this moment, and we're testing little things as small as the color or big things as long as features, or how we do the marketing, where we'll buy hundreds, thousands of keywords or run a bunch of different creative, and we can see real time how it's working. And every week we know if things are ticking up or down, and we adjust. And so how we run as a business, how we build the product, how we market the product, it's all based on data. And if you said, what's the thing that will hold you back from making more advancements, it's our ability to run more tests and get more data to improve.
Right. John, how do you use it? You have a good and a very interesting story about data in your business.
Yeah, I think it's important, first of all, that I just define my business, because I'm often compared to other players that really aren't in the same business. When we think about American Express, there's really 4 key assets. The first is our merchant network. Okay, we have a relationship, a first-hand relationship, with many millions of merchants around the world. The second asset is our customer base, our card members, where we have just under 100 million card members around the world. And then the third asset is the data exhaust that those first 2 put off. So we actually are able to see what people are doing on a behavioral basis. It's data that we have had access to for many years. The data is used for a variety of things. I mean, fraud, for example, is one of the things that we've built our databases around. And you'll note that we have the lowest fraud rates in the industry. But we've also recognized that there are marketing opportunities. Now, let me be really clear. When it comes to data, we protect the data to a point of extreme, I guess. But we protect the data. There's never personally identifiable information ever revealed to anyone outside the company. There is only aggregated data that's used to help build businesses. But there's no question that the data is a critical part. The fourth asset is the American Express brand, which really stands for trust and service. And I'll touch on that a little later.
Because I mean, Google is a data business almost, you could argue. How is it used competitively and to advantage at Google?
I guess echoing what Yusuf said and John said, it is used to improve products constantly for the consumer, because aggregated data, as John mentioned, can be used to make the next product even better for the consumer, or the next search even better, because you have information on how other people are using search, and that information goes into defining what's a better answer for the next person. If you translate that into the marketing side, and I'd like to supplement Tim's quote around data as marketing is the new finance, right? If you think about it, we've been able to apply all the online advertising that people do. You have clear metrics now. You can actually understand what the engagement levels are. You can understand return on investment. You can understand what people get for what they spend. And that's not been true across the board in marketing spend. So as we go down this journey, and as we go from a brand awareness concept to a brand engagement notion, which John and I were briefly talking about earlier, where you can actually measure how much people engage with your brand, again, that's going to get measured in terms of some way that consumers are going to have to, we've got marketers going to ask for it. So can you tell me what the brand engagement metric is? It's no longer putting 20 people in a room, putting bright lights on them saying, tell me what you thought about the ad. You'll figure it out based on the number of clicks you get, the number of times people have engaged with your brand. And that's what marketers want. They want brand engagement. And all those metrics are going to be measured in the online world. So I think we're started on the data journey, how it impacts marketing. We're going to keep going down that path.
Now, it was once that if you wanted to engage with a bunch of people, you would, tens of millions at one time, you would buy a 30-second spot. John, you bought a lot of 30-second spots and still
we still buy 30-second spots.
Still do. And Google, you bought a Super Bowl ad this past January. And are you going to do that again, do you think?
Is that one swallow doesn't make a summer or something like that? No, I don't know if you're going to buy another ad. We thought it was a great ad, so we bought it.
Yeah.
If you think there's a great ad, if you think there's a great opportunity, we'll do it again. But there's no hard and fast rule that we're going to use that.
How do you think the ability to measure all of this and have all this data and make decisions almost in real time, as you pointed out, Yusuf, changes the ecosystem of television?
Well, I think I mean, the level of accountability goes up a lot. I mean, television and online, let's say online video, they're kind of apple and orange today, like for the media that we buy. And today we're pulling a lot of TV dollars to online just to experiment. TV is a known commodity. You can pretty much guarantee you're going to get what you get with it, but it's 3 networks and 20 cable channels. With online, you're talking about thousands of sites. You get much, much richer engagement, and you can really understand how that viewage worked. And so you have this good tension between how do I use online that is more engaging and gets me more data with the television model where you can kind of guarantee broad reach pretty effectively.
John, if you had to reach, at a mandate, I've got to reach 100 million people this week, and I've got to get a message in front of them, are you going to go to Yusuf or Nikesh, or are you going to go to television?
I'm going to go to everybody. I mean, if I have to reach 100 million people in a week, I'm glad I don't have that challenge. But I do have to reach actually 100 million people in about 3 weeks. We're working on a program right now called Small Business Saturday, where we're working with a coalition of partners to drive people to shop in small businesses on the Saturday of Thanksgiving weekend, because small businesses is really the heartbeat of our economy, and we think it's something that we can help to do. So, John, that's a real-life example of where we need to be in touch with many people in a very short period of time. So how do we do it? Well, we enlist everything. So would we look to both of these folks? Absolutely. Microsoft's critical. There's some key things we would do with that. Certainly Google. Facebook, we're doing this particular program as a partnership with Facebook. But we also go to traditional media. We're doing things in newspapers, on radio, in television. But public relations is a critical channel for us as well. On top of that, we also have a lot of high-profile card members who we work very closely with. And if this particular event appeals to them and is something that they see value and merit in, we'll contact them and say, will you get behind it with us? So, we look at what's so great is it's more complicated than ever before, right? I mean, maybe one day there was a time where you could just buy a radio commercial and a TV commercial and you were done. I think it was a little harder than that, but let's oversimplify. Today it's a lot more complicated, but a lot more fun, because you can do just about anything. There's nothing that's out of bounds in the marketing business today, except respect your customer's privacy and listen. And I think that's really what we spend most of our time trying to focus on. And we come up with plans that have multi-dimensions to them, because our customers are living their lives in all of those dimensions.
So, Nikesh, you wouldn't argue that necessarily, hey, John, don't worry about it. We got you covered. We got your 100 million, and you can do it all with us.
To John's point, I think we are in a period of transition. I think today he will have to go to multiple places. But I want to go back to what you and Yusuf were talking about. I think the big prize here in the next 5 to 8 years is video advertising. I think the biggest radical change we're going to see in our lifetimes in advertising is going to come in the video space. It's very clear, and it's very interesting. When you're in the middle of a transition, it's very hard to recognize it. When you get out of it, you realize it was blindingly obvious. I think 5 years to 8 years from now, all of us will have IP addressable televisions, whether it comes through a Google TV or an Apple TV or just a broadband connection in the back of your TV. And that changes 2 fundamental things. One, it gives a return path to the end consumer. And the return path allows that brand awareness to convert into brand engagement, right? And that's what John wants. John doesn't want to show his ad to 100 million people. He wants 100 million people to interact with that ad. That's a very different proposition. And the moment you stick a broadband cable behind your TV, you can create that engagement. So I think the big prize here is television advertising. And as we go through the technology transition, as people start having addressable televisions, and as John can show a different ad to you versus an ad to Yusuf or to me. He wants to do that. He doesn't want to show the same ad to 100 million people again. And he's not going to show 100 million ads, but he might show 8 different variants of ads depending on the time of day even.
Now, this would be based, again, on the data that you as platforms have. This is what I find interesting. You have a bunch of data. Yusuf, you have a bunch of data. John, you have a bunch of data. How do you get it to talk to each other to determine what message gets to whom when? Is this something that you feel like is a problem that's close to solved, or is this a 5 or 10-year horizon?
I'd say it's a continuum. Okay, I don't think that the problem goes from not being addressed at all to being solved. I think we're in the midst of a transition. I think that the ability to target today is far greater than ever before. I mean, just the fact that consumers, first of all, one of the key trends is consumers, I call them the I'll decide, not you generation. I mean, they want to decide when they're going to watch something. They want to decide what they're going to see, when they're going to see it, how they're going to see it. And that change is affecting the way we market. We have to listen. That's one of the key points of data we have. And then we also have the behavioral data. We're using that data to better understand how to serve those customers, serving them with the right messages, serving them with the right offers. So we're already doing that. Will that continue to improve? Absolutely. I think the improvements there will continue to progress. We've seen great improvements in the last 3 to 5 years, and we will continue to see greater and greater improvements in how we target based on behaviors, likes, dislikes, et cetera.
Yusuf, Bing was a huge undertaking and a big push for the past year and a half. It's under your leadership, and it has a significant marketing piece. You're in an underdog position from a market share point of view compared to your compatriot to your left. What have you learned spending that money, and how have you shifted that over the last year or so?
We've learned a lot, I think, in terms of just the general marketing. I mean, it all starts obviously with first solving some unmet consumer needs, and so all the good work Google has done and the industry has done. There's lots of areas still to improve. I think even Nikesh would agree that we're all going to work for a long time. And
he hasn't shaken his head.
Well, maybe not. Maybe it's all done. I think he's.
Lots of improvement.
I think there's lots to improve. And so I think one of the things that I think we're excited about is how we go and solve some of those unmet needs, and how we've gone out to build the Bing brand in terms of, first of all, awareness and perception, which is easy, and then getting to some of the harder things that these guys were talking about in terms of brand engagement. What we've learned is that it's not so much about the reach. You can reach a lot of people easily. It's really what is the quality of that engagement, and then what are you really trying to do? The impetus on understanding our customers now, we can understand actually the engagement that people have with our brand at a very deep way, on aggregate level, individual level, and you can see how people sort of try something, and then they leave, and then maybe they come back. And the amount of knowledge that you now have about how people are actually using the products is amazing. And so the way we've tweaked our spending is to really try and help solve the problems, and then as a result, sort of help them discover the product a bit more. And that's been interesting.
You've got one of the greatest challenges, I think, when it comes to affecting consumer behavior at scale. And I think, John, you have this as well, because as you pointed out when we started, you wanted to explain kind of how your business was distinct from the credit card business. And we want to get to that in a second, particularly something that Eric said earlier. But in the case of you, Yusuf, people get habituated to using a certain search engine because it works very well. Your job is to dehabituate them or get them into a different habit. How do you do that? I mean, what's the strategy there to get mass consumer shift? I mean, you've grown share significantly, but still probably not where you want to be.
Yeah, I think, we have a long ways to go in terms of what we'd like to accomplish. And share has grown. We've grown it, we've almost, we're about 70% growth from when we started. And some of our best users are also happy Google users. And part of it is, as I said, it's about talking about new areas where search doesn't help. And so in particular, today, the web is very good. Search engines are very good for navigating to finding websites, but they're not very good at helping you accomplish tasks. And so, for example, For anyone who traveled today, someone said, I got to print my boarding pass out ahead of time. Most people didn't go in and type in print out boarding pass. They typed in probably something like Southwest or Southwest Airlines, and they had to figure out how to go do that. We've built a bunch of tools to help go and help make that an easier process, and there's a long ways to go to improve that. So part of how we accomplish our marketing challenges is by helping explain some of that difference and then connecting in and showing some of the things within the product and with some partnerships to help make some of that come alive. And there's a lot of work behind it, but some of it's PR. Some of it's our partnership like we did with Facebook around bringing trusted advice into the search engine. Some of it is through traditional TV and advertising. So it's a very broad effort. But you're right, it's a very hard thing because habits die hard, as they say.
Yeah. Nikesh, I wanted to ask you, maybe we can pivot a little bit, and John, I would love your comment on this after Nikesh. The platforms for marketing. I think basically we have the two of you have the biggest and most complex set of tools, from ad exchanges to large ad networks and sets of inventory to these massive sort of vertical programs. And this all happened in the last 3 years, really, with the acquisition of DoubleClick and Aquantive. How are those going to look in a year or two? Nikesh, display, Eric mentioned earlier, is the largest growing business at Google. Why is that, and what is it? Where is it going? And John, perhaps you could follow up and say, what is it that you want out of those channels that you're not getting? So I'll start with you.
Sure. I think one of the big insights, if you think about it, the display business is older than the search advertising business. It's been around for longer than that. That's where the internet started monetizing itself. And it's sort of stagnated in terms of technology, and in terms of being able to meet the needs of marketeers, it sort of stagnated because we were still selling websites until a few years ago. If you wanted to buy, you bought a CPM on a particular website, and the website had a particular profile. Now, John is not going to go hunting in 5,000 websites or 50,000 websites to add up all the profiles and say, I found my 20 million users I wanted to target. I think the big sea change we've seen in the last 3 years is that if you separate the three parts now, you have inventory, which is millions of websites which want to have advertising on themselves. You have a technology layer in the middle, which basically allows you to aggregate those websites and provide a united front to people like John saying, okay, you want 50 million people, 18 to 35, technology savvy in the following 17 locations. Here's how I aggregate it across 5,000 websites or 50,000 websites. And John doesn't really care, within reason, where those people are going, because he's more interested in the people than he's in the underlying websites. Right? And the third part of that is an ad sales force, which can, for us, from an exchange perspective, go help monetize all that inventory. And they go do that with John. So what has happened in the last 3 years is we've built capability on aggregating inventory with multiple publishers. We built capability in having a technology layer, which allows John to find those 50 million or 100 million people that he's targeting. And then we have a sales force which will go out and help fill up that inventory. I think that shift will continue. You will find more and more formats enter the exchange. As I said, the big price is video advertising, because that's a $200 billion market. And as that starts coming into the exchange, which will create the consistency where multiple publishers will be starting to talk about the same user, because you don't want a user to be classified one way by a publisher, another way by the other publisher, because he doesn't want to find out, you call an 18 to 35 who's technology savvy like this, but the other person calls them like that. So that exchange layer provides that consistency in naming. And I think what we're going to see is we're going to see a few consistent exchanges around the world where people will be able to buy the audiences they're trying to buy. And you will see a lot of agencies adopt a lot more technology which allow people like John to buy that advertising. That's the abridged version.
Do you feel like through these exchange platforms, you're really going to be able to get that kind of engagement that you're looking for? Because it does seem to divorce the publisher from the relationship a little bit, because there is this layer in between. Or is that just a temporary issue?
I think it's more of a temporary issue. I mean, I certainly agree with most of the points here that we're looking for, obviously, some simplicity in an area that's gotten very complex, right? And if we can aggregate some of these answers, there's no question there's an opportunity for us. But can I just go a little differently in addition to that?
Go ahead.
I have to reflect on the earlier commerce conversation, because we're in the commerce business, clearly, but American Express is a little different from a lot of the other commerce things we've been talking about. because we're in a service business. That's the business. That's how we define our business. And, I mean, if you think about it, we've been in business for 160 years. And during that 160, by the way, the company was 108 years old before it had the first American Express card. So we're certainly not wedded to the artifact of a card. What we're wedded to is the relationship. And that relationship is built through service. And I find it interesting when different groups have conversations about who owns the customer. My belief is those who serve the customer own that relationship, not just those who declare it. And so we have a very deep relationship with our customers, and that engagement is very real. How many people here have an American Express card? Show of hands. Can you just shout out your member sense date?
83. Did I hear a 52?
No, it was 58. It was launched, so it couldn't have been 52. My point in doing that is to say, why do you know that date? I mean, what brand do you know the tenure of the relationship? And that's a level of engagement. That engagement is developed through service, not transactions. Transactions are a commodity. Service is not. And so what we focus on is building relationships that have engagement. So coming back to this question, what we're looking for are partnerships where we can deliver a service relationship, even to people we don't yet have business from. Because ultimately, the value in our relationships is based on service. I mean, look at the hierarchy of our cards, right? Green card, gold, platinum, and then our black card, the Centurion card, right? $7,500 to get one of those cards. What are people paying for? They all transact exactly the same. So am I in the transaction business, or am I in the service business? Because that's what changes as you go up the hierarchy.
Well, I wanted to ask you because in the conversation we had with Eric earlier, and he showed the near-field communications technology.
Yep.
One of the things he said was, well, this will obviate credit cards. We no longer need the card. And I think what he was saying was you actually don't need the plastic.
The plastic, yeah.
Yes.
I think that's what he was saying as well. And we welcome that day because, for us, it's not about the plastic. It's about the relationship. So, if you talk to people about those who are customers of ours, service comes up, and that is the basis. It's trust and service are the two things that we focus on. And any change in adoption of new technology is going to require high levels of trust, because adoption rates in financial services are the slowest of any category, high levels of trust and responsive service. So that's why we focus on those things as the basis of our business. So as we're marketing, we want to create a service experience with our customers or our prospects to show them what it's like to be a customer. So as we look at these platforms, these digital platforms, the question is, how can we make our marketing more of a service to those prospects so we can bring them in based on an understanding of what we do?
I want to ask, because it's sort of thematic, but there are many, many insurgents in your businesses. John, American Express, bought a company called Revolution Money. And I imagine you're cooking up all sorts of things, in the skunk works at American Express. There are, still to this day, new search engines that are launching every quarter, every month, it seems. There are new search engines.
Must be a good business.
Yeah, it must be good. Must be a good business. I guess it's not just 1 year ago. But what do you make of in particular, in this world where you're seeing marketing and commerce coming together, right? And I think Google was sort of the firing gun of that, with inverting the marketing model and saying you only pay if someone clicks, right? What do you make of, who keeps you up at night, right? Are there, and you don't have to name companies per se, but what are the areas where you're not built out and you wish you were, or you're watching very closely? For example, what do you make of this social commerce that has just taken off like gangbusters?
I think for us, the things that keep us up at night are in the areas of some of what you were saying, how the web is evolving. The web is evolving in an exciting way, and the example I gave you, kind of our vision for the web, which is really around, kind of reorganizing the web to help you accomplish tasks, like the print boring example, or to buy a product. To make that happen, you're talking about almost, re-architecting the index that you serve, the way websites relate, the way the different data elements come to bear. That is a super hard problem. in terms of how we re-architect what we do. That's one thing that keeps us up. The second thing is how a bunch of great, exciting things have occurred. So you might call it the application of the web. The fact that apps now are the way that people interact on mobile phones, but they're really doing web things. That changes the nature.
Well, could apps be the way people interact with Bing?
Yeah, absolutely. And in a way, they do. We have a very rich app on iPhone, for example.
Well, I don't mean that. I mean, actually, when you're on Bing, I mean, I'm thinking about your print the boarding pass example.
Right.
That starts to feel, if you can go to a service like Bing and that somehow happens, that feels like you're using an app.
Yeah.
And it's a very different app than the Bing app or the Google app, right? It is a specific. Could search, and Nikesh, I'll ask you this, become a platform for app development?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is in many ways what we think will happen, which is that even today, the little apps that we talk about become a problem when you have so many of them. Because if you want to plan a night out, the question is, do I install and run Urban Spoon or Yelp or OpenTable, or which of these do I pick? They're all great services. It'd be so much better if I could just say, hey, book me this table, or I want to plan a night out. What are my options? And then have the options come to bear. And I think all of those application providers would love to find a way to say, hey, great, if you have context and consumer intent and understanding, we'd love to plug in. How should we change and evolve what we're doing to plug into that one opportunity? So I think there's a number of things in there around application, around geospatial and local mobile, and then just the overall, as I said, I think changing the web a bit from sort of a noun and page metaphor to a task metaphor. So there's a lot of things.
So John, in a service model, as you describe it, does that mean that many, and if not most, of the services need to become sort of also appified from American Express?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there's no question we have to keep changing what we do. You talked about insurgents versus incumbents. I mean, at a 160-year-old company, you definitely have experienced incumbency. And we find, I mean, we've learned over the years that, you know, if incumbency becomes complacency, it's definitely a liability. You know, the things that keep us up at night are the fact that the pace of change in the, you know, in the way people are changing their habits about how they buy. Earlier, the conversation talked about, you know, how the mobile web clearly is a way of the future for purchasing offline and online. You know, these things create new challenges and new opportunities. There's no question it keeps us up at night because we have to change aspects of our business model. But for us, what helps is knowing what never changes. You know, we have a history that we get to reflect on, and trust and service never change. Those things have been constant since we were moving people's valuables in stagecoaches. What changes are how you service them and how you earn their trust. And those things are where we have to keep moving very quickly. And I will tell you that the pace of change is meteoric at this point, and you know, we're working with it. You mentioned Revolution Money, which is a platform we bought because it gives us a redefined merchant, a P2P merchant. And you know, redefining that space in our business is going to be another critical change that we need to
perhaps for the audience, because I'm not sure everyone knows what it is. Can you give us
Revolution Money was a startup that, frankly, we purchased it in November of last year, a year ago. And the reason we purchased it is because it's a great platform that allows us now to, we'll service our customers with virtual wallets. It allows our customers to load those wallets with whatever form of payment they want to load them up with. And it allows them then to make easy and seamless peer-to-peer payments, whether it be you know, for a merchant that's an establishment, a store, or all the way through to individual P2P payments. And so it allows us to open up new businesses for ourselves.
Right.
So you know, we're doing that in concert with the work we've done over the last 10 years in prepaid cards. There's a lot of new businesses that we've entered.
New product. Yep.
Yeah.
So what keeps you up?
I want to take a slightly different take at the same thing, which Yusuf and John are talking about. If you go back and look, the internet is a reflection of what we did as a society, right? Pretty much everything you do on the web today with electronic means, we used to do somewhat differently before. Whether it was social networking, whether it was buying books, whether it was buying commerce, whether it is anything you do. But more and more activities are shifting to the web or shifting to this mega platform called the web. Now, what is that? It's 280 exabytes of information created in 2010, 5 exabytes created from the beginning of mankind till 2003. So the amount of information is exploding and going up in tremendous proportions. I think in that ecosystem, in that context, there will be a role for search. People will need a way to find information. People will need a way to find these various platforms that are going to exist on the web, whether it's a commerce platform or a book reading platform or whatever you call it. So I just believe we're seeing consumer phenomena shift from offline ways to online ways. And the fascinating part is because this platform has sort of a near zero cost of distribution, you can start a business today and innovate and reach 2 billion people in a split second, where trying to reach 2 billion people in any physical business would take 160 years, right? So the pace of innovation, the speed of innovation is tremendous. So in that context, the people you have to worry about are the two guys in a garage. You can't worry about the incumbents. You have to worry about the guys.
Mark Pincus back there?
Well, again, depends on in what context you worry about it, right? If you see him yet another phenomena which is coming online and 2 billion people are shifting one more offline habit to an online habit, then the Electronic Arts of the world should be worried about Mark Pincus because he's got Farmville. Right?
But do you worry about, and this is for you as well, your inability to, as Stephen Johnson put it, link to a particular panel or pane inside Farmville and therefore not be able to create value out of that conversation that's going on in that game?
I think it's fair to say that the 4 or 5 players in the online space are not going to invent every phenomena and every consumer behavior for the next 20 years. There will be people who will do it out there. There will be people who will be fast followers. There will be people who will adapt to it, adopt it. So lots of different things are going to happen in this ecosystem, and we're going to see a lot of players. I don't think we're done yet,
right? Because
we are trying to shift, $700 billion worth of advertising monetization, trillions of dollars of e-commerce, trillions of dollars of, media consumption to this platform. And in that context, you will see many, many, many new players. Some existing players will shift onto this web, and some of the players will go away, and new players will be born.
I want to give you guys a chance. We only have a minute and a half or so left. Great. But if anyone has a question for these 3 gentlemen, please come to the mics up here. I want to maybe push a little bit further on the question of, which I think we opened with, the sort of open versus closed question, right? And ask you what you make of the extraordinary success of the iPad as a platform, and how it shifts and changes your businesses. Mobile marketing, for example, and the ability to get a message into that space, as well as have a service experience in that space. And obviously, the Android tablets are coming on, and I need to acknowledge that, as well as the Windows Mobile and the Windows 7. Where do you think that goes in the next year? It feels to me, as an outside observer, a little fragmented and a little confusing. Is it? Do you think it's going to get integrated, or is John, as you want to spend your marketing dollars to reach these large number of consumers, you're going to have to go across tons of different devices on tons of different OSs with tons of different middlemen, and it's going to be sort of, difficult to do that?
Well, I mean, from my perspective, I think it's no question that there are going to be just lots and lots of new devices, and that will be a lot of extra work, and there'll be friction, and it'll also be a lot of fun. I mean, the latest one, in addition to the ones you named, we just released Connect recently for Microsoft Connect, where you can interact and game with the television. And the amazing thing is you can use your hand to manipulate. And there's a little game product that we had that my daughter was playing with, this tiger, where you can effectively pet the tiger. And you can imagine that that's an open IP platform. You can imagine that as people are going around, they can look at a product, and you can imagine they could actually pick it up and take a look at it. And what would you pay to have someone pick up and sort of hold your brand and look at it and know, oh, this person, they were actually looking at it as opposed to on the other aisle looking at the other product. And so there are a number of different experiences that will open up platforms. There's going to be so rich that I think John said that you just have to kind of steel yourself for the fact that there'll be a lot of opportunity. You just have to pick and choose which ones really deliver value.
Right. Yeah. Well, I would like to keep this conversation going, but I am being told that we have to stay very much on time because we've got a room to turn for a great dinner tonight. So please join me in thanking these 3 gentlemen for a great conversation.
Thank you, John.
Thank you very much. Thank you, John. Thanks very much. Thanks so much.